My name is Casey Travis. I'm 69 years old. Actually, I wrote a whole little essay.
You want to read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll listen. It's
Okay.
let's record it.
It hasn't been edited or anything, but
It's all right.
because I believe that, becoming a woman is a process. And I think that's probably true for men too. I mean, you don't start out a man, you start out a boy and you learn things along the way, which, that's just being human. But so I'm going to start from my childhood. And I really have to be honest and say that when I was as young as third grade, I rebelled against the idea that I was born a girl. I was really aware, even at that young age, how differently my brother was treated than I was. And I love my brother. I loved him very much, but he didn't have to set tables, he didn't have to iron clothes, he didn't have to do laundry, he didn't have to clean the dishes, he didn't have to do anything. And as in my mother's eyes, he was the golden child, the boy. He gets to have everything he wants and he doesn't have to work. All the girls are here to just be the servants, but he's special. So even at a very young age, I realized that in my mother's eyes, I was meaningless. But this was not true in the eyes of my father. My father and I were very, very close. And if I hadn't had my father, I don't know where the hell I'd be today. He was the one who supported me. He was the one who really loved me and understood me. He encouraged all of my creativity, and he taught me all these things that girls didn't learn to do in the 50s. I learned to camp, I learned to fish, I learned to hunt. I learned to do all these outdoor things that girls just didn't do, and I loved it. We used to target practice. We used to skate shoot together. He ordered me a special rifle from Italy that was designed for women so that the kickback wasn't so strong and I wouldn't get bruised. I mean, he did all this wonderful stuff for me. My mother couldn't be bothered. My father was like, I'm going to teach you how to road rally. and I think because my brother was very reclusive, but I was the one that, I want to learn everything, and
Yeah.
also all of that meant that I got to spend more time with him, which to me was like my cherished thing, was to spend time with my father.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I guess the next thing goes along. When I this is a significant story to me because this is how my father helped me and loved me the way my mother didn't.
Right.
When I got my first menses, which fortunately for me was when I was 16, it came late. I went running in tears, not to my mother, but to my father, and said, I hate this. I don't want it. I don't want children. I don't want to get married. The whole idea of it's ruining my life. I want my old body back. My old body, I could figure skate. I could run like the devil. Now I hate it. I hate it. I just want it over with. Can you take it back? And I was really crying inconsolably. And he was just so sweet. He took me in his arms and he just listened to me. He didn't try to unconvince me that I had been dealt a bad deck. He just listened to me. I raged. I mean, I was just furious. I was just so angry. And I raged and cried. And he just had me in his arms and just listened to me. He let this huge long crying jag go on. And at the end of it, I think the thing that was one of the wonderful things about my father was he didn't try to talk me out of my feelings. He accepted my feelings, and as if to say, you have a right to feel that way.
Right.
and said, one day you're going to change your mind because, one day you might really want to have a child. And this is the only way you can do it. I was so fortunate to have a father like that. No girls in the 50s had a father like that. And also he knew about the whole, my father loved art. He loved music. He took me to the opera. He took me to the ballet. He took me to art museums whenever we would go out of town. We'd always stop and spend a long time at art museums. He took me to all the local art museums and all, it was just like he bought me all kinds of art books and art supplies, whatever I needed to draw or do whatever I wanted, paint. I always had the right materials. I've always felt really fortunate that I landed in the arms of my dad. Um, because my mother was no help to me at all. Um, so there's another story about my dad, which is really sick. So my dad, this whole thing, I don't want to have my period. I don't want to have any of this. He was like, so he slowly, you know, sort of guiding me into womanhood very carefully and very thoughtfully, you know, pointing out things that were really great about being a woman. And it's like, tell me more. I don't see it yet. Um, anyway, so one time, he was a big mucky muck in a large U.S. Corporation, and we were living in New York again, outside of New York City, and he was working in New York City, and he'd hired this woman to come as a business consultant, and you'll never believe who it was. Gloria Steinem. Yes, because before she got really involved in the women's movement, she used to do like counseling and guidance for people in business to try to, negotiate
Wow.
deals and things. And she was pretty young, but he got to know her really well because he was the one who hired her. And he said to me, you know what? I've met this woman and I think you would really, really like her. And I'm going to bring you to go see her talk. She's going to give a talk, and I really want you to listen to what she has to say, because then I think you will feel much better about your future and about what options are open to you. So he took me to see her, and this is when she first started giving her speeches about the women's movement. And it was really like, really? You mean this could really happen? I could really think this way. I could really do things this way. And I was still kind of stuck in that cultural pull to try and be a girl, try to be, you know, try to want to be a wife or something, the things that I was supposed to do. But hearing her talk, just like, it really was mind blowing for a young girl. Anyway, so I wanted to tell you that he had
Well,
brought me to see her.
that's huge. What
It
an
was
interesting
huge.
a fork in the road for you, so to speak.
Yeah, but it was, I wished I could have grasped more of what she was saying. I mean, I knew it was different and it was a different way of thinking, and I'm thinking, she's kind of like my grandmother, she's got this other thing besides being a wife and a mom, but I was too young to really take it all in.
How old were you about, do you think?
Um, I was in high school.
Okay.
I was probably like a junior in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, later I read everything she wrote on, she was a real inspiration for so many women. And the other part of her was that, she really was not a man hater. She liked men. She just didn't like what was going on for women. Anyway, it was really worthwhile for me to have seen her talk when I was young. And then the other story, ending story about my dad was that years later, my father died too young. Um, it was one of the worst things I'd ever had to go through was losing my dad. Um, he died very young. He was 50 something. He wasn't even 60. Of a massive heart attack. But before he died, he had told me, he confided in me that he would never forget the time I came crying to him because I had my period. And he goes, he so admired the rebellious streak in me and that I had the guts to say what I thought and try to buck the system, that he knew no matter what happened to me, I would always land on my feet because I was so damn rebellious.
Yeah, that you weren't
Kind
gonna
of
hold
cute.
it in. Yeah.
Yeah. So then my next perception of being a woman, kind of, that kept in high school. I was a mess of feeling victimized a lot because I was smarter than a lot of other girls, and it was like you're not supposed to be smart. No, you're supposed to be a stupid girl.
Yeah, you're too
And
smart to be a girl.
yeah, right. And I did, I had read extensively. I was a huge reader, and I used to get really angry because I was never called on in class, except for a few men teachers that did call on me because they knew I had something to say. But most of them, I'd never get called on. The guys were, the guys would be like, banging their chest and call on me. I need to be the leader of all this stuff. And I'd be raising my little humble hand and just be ignored. And it was, um, it was infuriating. Um, it was really infuriating because, you know, 3/4 of the time I had the right answer and they didn't. But and the other thing that really really hurt me in high school was the double standard.
In what way?
Well, in that, boys could have sex and do whatever they wanted with whoever they wanted. But, in that time in the 60s in high school, if a girl had sex, you were a slut and there was no getting over it. Your reputation would be ruined. And of course, boys would blab. So you had to sort of just pretend like you had no sexuality at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it was, that was so far from the truth. You're in high school, all you are is a mass of hormones. And
Right.
but yet but yet you have to pretend that you don't even think about it.
Yeah. I mean, even I grew up with that too. The denial of my the denial of my body and my sexuality. Yeah.
Anyway, so this boyfriend and I we were friends with benefits before that idea was even coined. Oh.
Love that.
So that was the high school part of what it meant to be a woman. It meant that you had to pretend you didn't care about sex. It meant that you wouldn't get called on in class. It meant that you were supposed to be much stupider than you really were. And it meant that it was still shit to be a woman, a girl. Um, so then college came. I'm ready to go to college, and by the time I was going to college, I knew that I wanted to be an artist. I knew I would never make any money. I didn't care. I just knew that I had to be an artist. And so I decided to go to a women's college, a private women's college, because all through high school, all I ever did was party. In fact, I used to go to class the beginning of each year and figure out who's the smartest person in this class. And then think, okay, I'm going to make a deal with this person. If it was a lab class like biology or chemistry, I'd go up to them. I'd say, look, I will do all the lab work. I'll do all the drawings. I'll write up all the stuff if you help me get a really good grade in this class. And it was really, it worked.
So you're
And then,
a very good negotiator.
and I said, not only will it do all that, but I'll invite you to all the cool parties. So like, it was great. It worked really well. And a lot of them were boys. And, I did get better grades in those classes because I had their help, because some of them were literally amazingly brilliant. Um, so that was the last story about being a woman in high school. Um, and then because of high school, I was so wild. I mean, I was so rebellious. I was so wild. I decided that, now that I know that I think I want to be an artist, I have to go to a women's college. So I sequester myself. I'm not distracted by going to parties or men of any kind. I just work, work, work. And that's what I did. I used to work 12 hours a day on weekends and holidays to just learn and do and experience as much as I could. But I still felt kind of insecure and doubtful about being a woman. I was sort of like, I don't know. I had a couple of boyfriends in college, and I was engaged 3 times, and I called it off all 3 times because I was terrified of the idea.
Yeah.
It really scared me. And all those men, every single one of them, they wanted to control me, and I knew it, because they would say things
Right.
like, well, you should change your major. You should be a teacher. You're not going to make any money doing art. You should change. You should teach art. And I was like, you
But
don't understand. I don't want to teach it. I want to do it. But it was still my goal to make it as an artist. And then I made the damn mistake of falling in love with someone. I mean, I really fell in love with this guy. I really admired him. He was incredibly gifted as an engineer. Um, he seemed to be really intelligent, and I didn't think he would end up destroying me the way he did, but that happened over a period of years, and it was again, he just had to control me. Um, so I at first, and when he asked me, I said, well, why don't we just live together? Because I was thinking, well, we can live together, and if it doesn't work out, I'm back on my own again. But he had come from this super religious family, and they couldn't tolerate the idea that he'd be living with somebody in sin. So I kind of like, all right, I guess we'll get married. But I have to say, when I got married, I was in a state of fear. Um,
how old were you when you got married?
27.
Okay.
I wasn't like really young, but none of our college friends had gotten married yet. It was just like, and I don't know, it just scared the bejesus out of me, getting married. And and guess what happened? I ended up washing clothes and ironing shirts and cooking meals and doing grocery shopping and working at shitty jobs that had nothing to do with art, so I could make money so he could buy the dream house he wanted. And slowly over the years, I didn't notice it at first, but as time went on, um, my autonomy as a human being was just eroding. And it got worse the more successful he became. Then it was like, I control all these people that work for me. I'm the boss, and I'm the boss of you. I'm the boss of everything. Um, And I went along with the whole thing, I actually had to be a corporate wife, which I was trained to do. I mean, I was really good at it. I knew how to talk to anybody in any station in life. I mean, it wasn't like the role didn't scare me. It's just it didn't provide anything meaningful to me, but it didn't
Right.
scare me. And I think I was very good at it because I'm very outgoing. And but then came the epiphany of all epiphanies, the holy, holy epiphany of everything. Motherhood. Motherhood sends you into a whole different stratosphere as far as what it means to be a woman. Um, I had my baby, my only child. She was a daughter. She was planned. It took me very many years to get pregnant, and I think it's just because I thought I'd be a crappy mother. Because I went to infertility, and they said there was nothing wrong with me. But I finally got pregnant when I was 39 years old, and this weird thing happened to me. Of course, my mother never told me about this because she never felt it.
Yeah.
I I fell so deeply in love with this new human being in my life that I have never felt that kind of affection and love for anyone in my entire life. It's just like it enveloped me.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like a drug. And I just felt like she was the most important thing in my life, and that I had to do everything I could for her.
Right.
I had to take care of her. I had to be there for her and everything. I had to teach her things. I had to expose her to things. It was just my job to be her mother. Um, and that, and all of my energy went into doing that. Motherhood, and even in that time, I mean, you're kind of like an only parent in so many ways. I mean, fathers didn't certainly my husband was not the father to my daughter that my father had been to me. So much of the impetus of being a parent was my job. I honestly believe, I think women are hardwired. Our DNA is to love our children more than anything. And it's like survival of the species. We have to have these strong feelings for our offspring, or they're not going to survive. I mean, this huge surge of creative energy came over me. It was like, I made a human being. This is amazing. This is beautiful. Life is wonderful. I am so happy. I feel in ecstasy over this thing that's happened to me. And I did some of my best work when I was a new mom. There had been like 10 kind of rough years in our marriage, where I had just sort of felt like I was put on a shelf and I was invisible. Um, I think that's a word now used a lot in psychology when it comes to people in marriage. I was the invisible partner, but I couldn't tell anyone because I wasn't allowed to tell any of my friends that we were having trouble in our marriage.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Because whoa, that might make him look really bad or something.
Yeah.
And then
Upholding the myth.
yeah. So anyway, I got into this depressed withdrawal thing, and you know, then I was asked for a divorce. I got over it, and I got to the point where, oh my God, I just love not being married. It's so wonderful. I can do whatever I want to do
It,
whenever I want to do it.
Casey, it's your natural state of being.